We're going to go through a basic overview of the university and hopefully give you some insight into it, to the history of it. Some of you may already know a lot of the history, but some of you may not. So, and this is basically the first chapter in the orientation book. So let's talk about the history of the university. Booker T. Washington, most of you already know who he is. A lot of times it's mistakenly believed that he founded Tuskegee, and he actually did not. Booker T. Washington was only the first president. And one of the things that we know about Booker T. Washington is his directness. He's a very direct and to the point person. One of his quotes that I like is this first quote says, "Few things help an individual more than to place responsibility on them and let them know you trust them." And that's what being a college student really is all about. You are becoming a responsible individual. You're responsible for, your welfare. You're responsible for getting to and from class. You're responsible for keeping up your grades and things like that. So we can learn a lot from him, and we will learn a lot when we read up from slavery. So why was Tuskegee founded? Well, first of all, the school itself, as we know it now, that's not how it began. It began near Butler Chapel AME Church, and Lewis Adams, who was a local African American educator, had an idea of creating an institute for teachers, right? A normal school, as they call it. And so that began on July 4th, 1881, with 30 students. And the main goal of the school was to produce teachers who taught farming and trades so that they could educate blacks across the South. And so if you look at even around campus, there are many buildings on campus that have bricks that were actually handmade by former students, right? Because at the inception of the university, there were several different trades and things like that being taught. So brick making, masonry, those were trades that were taught at the university. The university itself became independent in 1892, so 11 years after its inception. So this is Lewis Adams. He was a former slave, and one of the things that he helped to do was secure the black vote in exchange for the establishment of this normal school. So once House Bill 165 passed, it authorized the founding of the Negro Normal Institute in Tuskegee. George Campbell, who was a banker and a former slave owner, and he was also really instrumental in bringing Booker T. Washington to Tuskegee University. And here's Booker T. Washington, the first president of Tuskegee, born in Halesford, Virginia, studied at Hampton University. He was a former slave. He taught black progress through education, and his idea was to set up a separate playing field for blacks because he understood that Jim Crow was basically well entrenched. And so his idea was to basically set up a separate playing field, a new system that blacks could flourish in. All right. Another key figure in the history of the university is Dr. George Washington Carver, and you can learn a lot about him. He's all over the place, but he was a brilliant scientist. He was a botanist. He was a chemist. He studied at Iowa State, and he was the first black student at Iowa State. He also got a PhD from Iowa State, and then came to Tuskegee in 1896 to run the agriculture department. So very, very fascinating individual and a beautiful soul. Also, you probably heard of the Red Tails, the Tuskegee Airmen. So this was the 332nd Fighter Group. Did not lose a single bomber to enemy fire in over 200 missions, and that record basically still stands. So it's a very, very elite group of fighter pilots, right from Tuskegee University. Daniel Chappie James, he trained pilots for the 99th Pursuit Squadron, and he served as the commander for NORAD from 1975 to 1977, and he's the first African American four-star general in the Air Force. So you see that again, that jet outside of Chappie is commemorative of our connection to the military. So now Tuskegee is independent and state-related school. We're a private HBCU, mostly STEM and liberal arts, and then we still serve a predominantly African American population. So the mission of the university is holistic education. Basically, in Booker T. Washington's words, we train the head, the hand, and the heart, right? So the mind, we train the emotions, and we train physically, we train the hand. Right. So what's the structure of the university? At the highest level, you have your trustees, the trustee board. They make and approve decisions for the university. They help make and approve budget allocations, and even they're even involved in the tenure and promotion process. And then under the trustees, you have the president, who is the basically the chief operating officer for the university and also the chief fundraising officer for the university. Under the president, you have your provost or vice president for academic affairs. The provost is when you see that term academic affairs, that means the provost handles academic issues. So any academic issue that arises on the campus, it will go to the provost eventually if it can't be handled at a lower level. Under the provost, you have the deans, right? And we have, right? So you have your deans, and each dean represents a college. And then within that college, you have different departments, right? And so that's why that after the deans, you have your department heads, right? For chemistry, I'm the department head. For biology, is Dr. Martinez, and so on and so forth. And then after the department heads, you have the faculty and staff. This is very important. There's a hierarchy, even if you have an issue on campus, right? If you have an issue with your professor, that goes to you go see your department head regarding that issue. If that issue can't be resolved by the department head, then you go see the dean. It'll go up to the dean level. If the issue can't be resolved by the dean, then it moves to the provost level, and more than likely there'll be some resolution at the level of provost. There are rare instances where things go to the president, but the president is not the first stop for a gripe or an issue. You want to start with your department heads and then move up from there, right? So again, there are 8 colleges or schools, and I have here listed the deans of each college. So for arts and sciences, you have Dr. Prakash. For business and information science, you have Dr. Kung. For engineering, Dr. Aglin. For vet medicine, Dr. Ruby Perry. You have for the nursing and allied health, Dr. Smith Hendricks. Carlton Morris for education, School of Education. For Canes is Dr. Walter Hill. And then for the School of Architecture and Construction Science, you have Dr. Jackson. So whatever your major is, you need to determine which one of these colleges or schools you are affiliated with. That's how you'll know which dean to go to if you have a problem. And also, that's how you'll be able to locate your department chair. So you have to ask, what is your academic program? So you ask, what is my major? Your major is chemistry, and I'm harping on that because I'm from the chemistry department. But if your major is chemistry, then you will go see your dean, who will be Dr. Prakash. If your major is nutritional science, you will go see your dean, who will be Walter Hill. If your major is computer science, you will go see your dean in CBIS, who is Dr. Coon, so on and so forth. So you need to know what college you're in. You need to know who your dean is. All of these are very important things to know, simply because it really prevents you from running around like a chicken with your head cut off, trying to figure out where to go, right? So you need to know, first of all, you should definitely know who your department head is and who your academic advisor is. Your academic advisor is going to help you to ensure that you are on track to graduate, that you're following the curriculum, whether you can make a substitution. If you want to go to summer school, you can go to your advisor and ask them about doing what's called a transient form. And that transient form will allow you to sign up for classes at another institution and then get credit for those classes at Tuskegee. So all of these things are tied up in knowing who your advisor is, who your department head is, who your dean is, so on and so forth.